Have you ever wondered if what you call love is actually just fear of being alone? If that tightness in your chest when you think about ending things isn't love, but panic at the thought of facing yourself in the mirror? It's a painful question. I know. No one wants to discover they may have confused need with affection, dependence with intimacy. But sometimes, what we need most is someone to help us look at these uncomfortable truths with kindness. Carl Rogers, one of the most compassionate psychologists to ever live, dedicated his life to understanding how we relate to ourselves and to others. And one of his most important discoveries was that many times what we call love is just our way of running away from ourselves. You know, when you stay in that relationship that isn't good for you, but you can't leave. When you fight, hurt each other, but when it comes time to end things, something inside you screams, no, anything but being alone. That feeling that it's better to be poorly accompanied than well with yourself. That's exactly what we need to talk about today. About how, without realizing it, we turn our relationships into shelters for our insecurities, and how that escape might be stopping us from discovering who we really are and what we're truly capable of. Because listen, it's not your fault to feel fear. It's not weakness to need someone. But there's a huge difference between loving someone and needing someone in order to exist. And that difference might be the key to finally setting yourself free and finding real love, starting with self-love. Have you ever stopped to think how many times you said, I love you, when what you really meant was, please don't leave me? How many times you've confused passion with desperation, romance with dependency? Rogers understood that this confusion doesn't come from malice or weakness, but from a very deep wound. The wound of not being able to be okay with yourself. It's like there's a void inside us that we can only seem to fill with someone else's constant presence. And then the relationship stops being a choice and becomes an emotional survival mechanism. The problem is, when we need someone just to breathe emotionally, we're not loving, we're clinging. You know that feeling that you only truly exist when you're with the other person? As if, alone, you're just a shadow, an unfinished sketch of a person? Rogers would call this a loss of contact with your own center, with your true essence. When we turn a relationship into our lifeline, something interesting happens. We stop being two people who choose each other and become two desperate halves trying to make a whole. But the problem is, two halves can never create a healthy whole. Think about it. When you're with this person, do you feel whole or do you feel relieved? Because wholeness and relief are very different things. Wholeness comes from within. It's a sense of being complete, even when you're alone. Relief comes from fear subsiding, from temporary emotional stillness. Rogers deeply believed that every person has within them a natural force pushing them to grow and become who they truly are. He called this the actualizing tendency. It's like a seed that naturally wants to become a tree. But when we use a relationship as a refuge, it's like placing that seed in a dark box, protected, yes, but without the conditions to grow. And so we begin to live in a kind of golden cage. We feel safe, but at the cost of our own authenticity. We start molding our way of being to avoid conflict, to not risk losing that safety. We stop expressing our dreams, our desires, even our sadness, because any of it might rock the boat. But have you ever stopped to consider that maybe the boat needs to be rocked? That maybe this sense of stability is just an illusion keeping you small? It's like someone who stays in a job they hate because they're afraid to take a risk. But in a relationship, it's worse. Because we're not just limiting professional growth, we're limiting our ability to be who we truly are. And there's something Rogers observed that's incredibly insightful. When we rely on another person as our main source of validation and safety, we're placing an unfair responsibility on their shoulders. We're asking them to carry a weight only we can carry, the weight of making us feel whole. Just imagine the pressure that creates. The person can't be spontaneous anymore, can't have their own moments of sadness or exhaustion because you panic. They can't grow or change, because any change threatens your sense of security. It's as if you're asking them to stop living so that you can feel safe. There's a beautiful and important difference between loving someone and needing someone for emotional survival. Rogers often spoke about what he called unconditional positive regard. That is, loving someone for who they are, not for what they do for you or how they make you feel. When you truly love someone, you want them to be happy, even if that means they might choose a path that doesn't include you. When you need someone, you want them to stay, even if it means they have to shrink themselves to fit into your needs. Think about how you feel when your partner goes out with friends, when they have dreams that don't include you, when they're happy without your presence. If your first reaction is abandonment, fear, or anger, maybe what you're feeling is need, not love. And sometimes, this shows up as a constant need for reassurance. You need to know where they are, who they're with. You need constant displays of affection just to believe you won't be abandoned. It's not ordinary jealousy, it's a desperate thirst for emotional safety. True love, as Rogers understood it, is freeing. It doesn't imprison, control, or demand. It simply is, like the sun that shines without asking anything in return. Emotional need, on the other hand, is like a black hole that pulls everything in, including the other person's spontaneity and joy. And here's a truth that might sting. When you need someone to feel whole, you're not offering love. You're offering a contract. I'll give you affection, attention, dedication, but in return, you can't leave me. You can't disappoint me. You can't stop making me feel special. But think about it. Would you rather be loved for who you are, or for how you make someone else feel? Would you want someone to stay with you out of love, or out of fear of being alone? The answer is obvious, right? So why is it so hard to apply that same standard to our own relationships? Rogers discovered something fascinating. Most people who struggle to be alone are actually struggling to be with themselves. It's not the relationship they love, it's the relief the relationship brings from their own company. It's like having a noisy neighbor living in your mind. That voice that criticizes, judges, tells you you're not enough. And then when you're with someone, that neighbor quiets down for a bit. You get a little peace. But the problem is, that peace is temporary, and it depends entirely on the other person's presence. Do you know why it's so hard to be alone sometimes? Because in the silence, without the distractions of a relationship, we come face to face with everything we've been avoiding. Our feelings, our thoughts, and the truths we haven't dared to confront about ourselves. Rogers discovered something deeply important. Most of us are afraid to find out who we really are. We're afraid that if we look inward, we'll find emptiness, inadequacy, or parts of ourselves we deem unacceptable. So we use relationships as a kind of emotional anesthesia. When we're focused on pleasing someone else, fixing the relationship, or living through the other person's emotions, there's no time or energy left to look within. And while that may feel like a relief at first, in the end it's like taking painkillers that don't heal the wound. They just delay the problem. The truth is, the fear of being alone isn't really about solitude. It's about the fear of realizing that maybe you don't know yourself as well as you thought. It's about the fear of discovering that you might not fully accept who you truly are. It's about facing that critical inner voice that tells you you're not enough. But here's something beautiful that Rogers uncovered. When you finally stop running from yourself and allow yourself to be seen by you, without masks, without filters, something magical happens. You discover that you're not as terrible as you feared. You learn that your imperfections don't make you less worthy of love. And even more importantly, you realize that you can keep yourself company, that you can be your own refuge, your own source of comfort, care, and understanding. Rogers believed that within every person lies a natural wisdom, an innate capacity to heal and grow. But that wisdom can only emerge when we stop avoiding ourselves. It's like a pure spring that can only begin to flow once we remove the stones blocking its path. And you know what one of the heaviest stones is? The belief that we need someone else to complete us. That belief keeps us constantly searching outside for what already exists inside. It keeps us dependent, needy, afraid. But what if I told you that you're already whole? That you already have everything you need to be happy? That the love you're searching for in someone else is just a reflection of the love you're capable of giving yourself? Starting over doesn't necessarily mean ending a relationship. It means beginning to relate differently, first with yourself, then with the other person. Rogers believed that true change happens when we stop trying to be who we think we should be and start accepting who we really are. That means looking at your fears, your insecurities, your needs, and instead of judging them, simply acknowledging them. Yes, I'm afraid of being alone. Yes, I've used this relationship as a refuge. Yes, I sometimes confuse need with love. This isn't a confession of failure. It's a courageous recognition of your humanity. And do you know what happens when you stop running from these truths? You begin to discover that you have far more inner resources than you ever imagined. You start to see that the care you've been seeking in someone else is something you can offer to yourself. You start to become your own refuge. That doesn't mean you'll never need anyone again. It means that you'll be able to choose to be with someone instead of needing to be. And that difference changes everything. When you no longer need a relationship to emotionally survive, you can finally choose one in which you can thrive. When you no longer need someone to feel complete, you can offer someone your wholeness. And then, you can truly experience what real love is. Love that frees, that celebrates, that isn't afraid of the other person's growth because you're growing too. Rogers used to say that true love is like a dance where each person keeps their own rhythm, but together they create a beautiful harmony. It's not one person erasing themselves to keep up, nor two people losing themselves in each other. It's two whole people choosing to share their wholeness. And to get to that dance, sometimes we first need to learn how to dance alone. We need to discover our own rhythm, our own inner music. We need to fall in love with our own company before inviting someone else to dance with us. Six, a gentle invitation for your journey back to yourself. Before we close, I want you to take a deep breath and allow yourself to feel whatever you're feeling right now. Maybe it's fear, maybe it's recognition, maybe it's a mix of relief and anxiety. All of that is okay. When we begin to question our own motivations in relationships, it's natural to feel some discomfort. Rogers always said that growth happens right in that uncomfortable zone, in that space between who we were and who we're becoming. So here's my invitation to you. How about starting to get to know yourself better? It doesn't have to be anything dramatic or radical. You can begin with small moments of conscious solitude. Just 5 minutes a day where you sit with yourself and ask, how am I feeling right now? What do I need today? Or maybe you start to notice when you're doing something out of fear rather than out of love. When you agree to something you don't believe in. When you hold back something you want to say. When you shrink yourself just to avoid conflict. This isn't about blame or judgment. It's about meeting yourself with the same gentleness you'd offer a dear friend. It's about beginning to treat yourself with the same patience and understanding you give to the people you love. And remember, you don't have to walk this path alone. You may discover that you need professional support, and that's a courageous choice, not a sign of weakness. You may realize you need time, and that's wisdom, not laziness. What matters is that you begin, that you take the first step toward truly knowing and accepting yourself. Because when you become your own refuge, you no longer need to turn someone else into your prison. And here's a beautiful truth. When you learn to love your own company, when you become whole within yourself, you don't stop needing love. You simply stop desperately chasing it. And it's precisely when we stop chasing love that we become able to receive and offer the purest, freest, most genuine kind of love. If this video touched something in you, if it brought you an important reflection, please leave a like so more people can find this message. Share it with someone who might need to hear these words too. And tell me in the comments, what reflection resonated most with you today? What's the first step you want to take on your journey of self-discovery? Your experience might inspire someone else going through the same thing. Subscribe to the channel for more content like this, always grounded in the wisdom of Carl Rogers, and always offering a warm, compassionate space for the deepest questions of the human heart. Until next time, and remember, you are worthy of love, especially your own.